we know how 10,000 Ukrainian civilians and soldiers have been victims of this conflict, of violence, but on the other side also 100,000 Russian soldiers. And for me, are bodies that ended up in the war machine. Many times, sometimes also young lives immolated on the altar of old and new irons. And this is, by the way, how a systematic rearmament can take place. Yet it should be clear that weapons only serve to die and to make people die. And the point is, why should we accept death as the inevitable solution to conflicts? A policy that doesn't save life, but rather demands death as a necessary solution is a necropolitics, a politics of death. And it is a policy which denies its own task, which renounces itself in favor of war and violence. So how to stop the war? With negotiations, with mediations. And let me put a last question. Why has Europe not assumed a mediating role that means peace negotiations? This is the point for me.
Peace negotiations and nothing happened.
I want to say to Donatella that I think you are 15% right and 100% wrong. I think that all wars are terrible, but I think that we need to make distinctions among wars. I think that it is a primary moral obligation to defend oneself and one's family and one's community. And it is a primary obligation, moral obligation. It is a duty to defend the weak. And neither of these two things can be done without power and sometimes without force or violence. Now, you shake your head, but I know of no circumstance in which a power launched a war of aggression and in the middle of it decided that they'd made a moral mistake and went home. I think that everything about pacifism goes against everything we know about the history of the human heart. Generally, pacifism likes to speak in a very high-minded, lofty tone of morality and moralism and so on. My own view is that pacifism, unless the entire world becomes pacifist tomorrow morning, pacifism's consequences are actually immoral.
My position is not the position of indifference. I am